Hello everyone, how are we all? Let's just click on there. Okie doke. Hope you can all hear me and see me okay. There's a few of you with me already. Oh, there's quite a few actually. Lovely to see. So I'm just wait here until I get a thumbs up from someone just to let me know that you can hear me. I think my microphone's working. Hi, Pippa Thomas Brass. Hello, that's a new name. I don't remember seeing you before on my Tuesday lives. It's lovely to have you here. Hi, Sue. Can you hear me, Sue? Yes, yes. Brilliant. Thank you, Sue. Perfect. Perfect. Hi, Evelyn. Loud and clear. That's great. Perfect. And Marion says she can hear me too. That's good. So at least I know you can all hear me. Oh, and Cheryl's here as well. Hi, Cheryl. How are you? And Kathy. Hi, Kathy and Suzanne and Tracy. Hello, Tracy. Thank you so much for your lovely comment there. And oh, hi, Tina. How are you? And Chris. Oh, good. Lots of familiar names and many more of you watching there as well, which is great. Hi, Linda. Hi, Carol. Oh, and Rebecca and Beverly. Oh, hi, Beverly. Are you crafting along today, Beverly? And Jean. Hi, Jean. Oh, everybody's coming there. Hi, Sandy. And not a lady. Okay, it's lovely to be back. I had last week off. I was in France and I was skiing, so I'm back all in one piece, safe and sound. Had a lovely week away actually. It was it's just so nice just to be outside all day. You leave your apartment. We was on a self-catering apartment, so you leave your apartment in the morning. Some morning earlier than others, I must admit. Towards the end of the week, the morning starts did get a little bit later and we were absolutely exhausted by the end of it, but it's so nice just to spend time outside. Even though it's cold, you've got the snow around you, but you've got brilliant blue skies and the sun is shining down on you. It's a real tonic. It's really lovely to be away. So yes, thank you, Tina. I did really enjoy my holiday, but I'm back with you now today. I had to get my brain in gear a little bit, make sure everything was all set up. But what I thought I'd do once I'd caught up with everything that happened with Lisa last week, you know, you go away for a week and so much happens, so I had quite a bit to catch up on. I'm sure many of you watched the craft day, which I believe was on, I think it was on Friday, wasn't it? I've caught up with that since. So lots of things have been released, lots of new products and whatever. But what I thought I'd do with you today is blend a couple of the new things together. We all know that Lisa's released her die cutting machine, and with it there is an exclusive design, the layering stencils, and I believe there is the dies and the embossing folder, but also come with the die cutting machine. I don't have the machine yet, and I don't have the embossing folder or the dies, but I do have the layering stencils for the exclusive design that comes with that Spellbinders machine. So this is the Basket of Love. It's a gorgeous set of layering stencils, and I think it's probably, I would say it's probably the most intricate set of stencils that Lisa has done to date, and it's just gorgeous. So what I thought I'd do, I'd stencil this with you today. This is the card that I made previously with this, and what you can see I've done is I've stenciled it, but then I've embossed with one of the Year in Bloom embossing folders. So I've embossed this with the September fuchsia embossing folder. So if I just turn that there, it's very subtle and faint in the background, which is what I wanted. So what I thought I'd do today is stencil this image as you can see it here, so all in the same colours. Pretty much inspired by Lisa's machine, to be honest with you, with these gorgeous greens. And I'm also going to blend that with one of the new releases, which comes as a pair. I'm using the Leafy Butterfly Frame. This comes as a set. It comes in a set of 2 or a pair with the Just a Heart craft dies also. So I should be using these ones another day. I'm not using these today. I'm using the Leafy Butterfly Frame. So what I thought I'd do is show you how this set works. And you can see I've sort of mocked up the card already. So I'm basically going to create this card blank for you, which is an Aperture. But I'm also going to stencil this, and we're going to use this and sit this on the inside there. So all the colours work really nicely together, and you get the best of both worlds actually. So that's what I thought I'd do. I'd combine the 2 designs for you. So you can just see on the side there, I've already put a list of the things that I'm using. The Leafy Butterfly Frame, I've put the code on the back, but at the moment this is available as a pair. So if you were to go for this, then you would get both of these together. And there's been some fabulous samples with the Just a Heart set, also in the Facebook group, Crafting with Lisa Horton Facebook, and Tina, who's here watching as well, would have made many of those fabulous ones. And I think possibly use some of the dazzle pastes with it as well. So keep an eye open for those. But this is the die I'm using today. I'm using the Basket of Love also. I haven't given you the number for this one because this, as you can see, I've just put on the side there, it is exclusive to the die cutting machine bundle. So if you purchase from Lisa Horton Crafts website or from Spellbinders, and I think possibly Hobby Maker as well, I'm not somebody might have to correct me on that one, you'll get this set or this design with the die cutting machine. But I'm also using the Best Wishes frame. This just makes a tiny little appearance just here, the background here, the tag, just to put my sentiment onto. Now this set actually comes with wording in itself, Best Wishes, so you could use this if you wanted to, but I used was it this one? Yeah, no it wasn't. I used the smallest one. This shape I thought was just perfect to fit this sentiment onto here, but you could of course use any of your fundamentals. There's lots of different shapes that you could use depending on the sentiment that you're going to use as well. You could stamp and put your sentiment on, you could die cut your sentiment on and put it straight into the card. So again, this side of things, what I'm trying to do with all of my lives is make these completely customizable to your style and what you have in your stash as well. So I'm here just to give you ideas and just sort of set you on your way and just show you how these sets work. So what I'm going to do to start with is just show you how we create this Aperture type card, because it's actually created in a slightly different way to what how I would normally make an Aperture card. I knew I wanted this leaf frame around the outside, but let me just bring in the dies. And this is why it's always important to sort of die cut and play with any new sets that you get initially on card that perhaps you're less attached to. I knew I wanted the leaves around the outside of the Aperture, but the way that the die works to cut the leaves means you are actually cutting a piece like this. Oh, it's actually gone a bit dark, isn't it? Let me take away that side thing so I've got plenty of my desk space to use. There we are. Okay, I might have to put the light on actually. Oh, bear with me. I'm just going to switch the light on. Hopefully it works. I haven't tested it this morning. Oh, that one's working. Let's turn that up. Oh, there we are. That looks a little bit better, doesn't it? So we've got some light on the matter there so we can see what's going on. Okay. So if you were to take just the die from the Leafy Butterfly Frame set and die cut this as is, this is the effect that you will get. So you are actually cutting around the outside of the leaves, so therefore you can't use this die alone to create the aperture. Okay, so what we need to do is we take our card blank. Okay, so I'm starting from scratch here. We've got my 5x7 card blank, and I've used the largest frame from this set, so the thinnest one, to cut my aperture on the front of your card blank. Okay, so we have our shape there already. Now what this gives us is the cutout or from there. Now you can keep this and use it somewhere else if you want to, or we can now take our leafy die, align this up on the piece that's come out of the aperture, and we can use this now to die cut our leaves. Now if I were to use just the leafy die by itself, then as I say, this would be the option that you could get, and this would be a lovely topper to go onto the front of your card that way, you know. So it's not giving me the aperture that I want for this, but this is certainly a beautiful piece of embellishment to use. So to create our aperture in the center, so we have a ring of leaves. I'm just making sure I'm lining up that on there. We take the next die down in the set here. It's almost like a sun shape, so it'd be really nice to work with on its own, but we just lay that on the inside, and you can see just how snug that fits on the inside of that leafy die. And what I like to do when I'm doing this, just to make sure that it doesn't slip and slide in my die cutting machine, is just attach those two dies together. Now I will die cut this in real time for you, so hopefully I won't shake all the proceedings about too much. So I'll just bring my die cutting machine in. Now I don't have Lisa's one at the moment, so I don't have the pretty green one. But I will show you how this works. So I've got my die, my two dies together. I'll line that up on the piece that came through and just run that through. Now I always run it through one time and then back again. To be honest, they do cut with just one pass, but it just makes it easier, so I'm not having to sort of reach over and get those dies. So I'm just going to put that back. I should be bringing that back in a second. Okay, and excuse the state of my plates. So we can get rid of the outer area. We don't need that in this particular time. So what we can now do is lift that way, and you can see that the inside is left. You can see how well it die cuts. And now we have our ring of die cut leaves, and we know that that is going to sit on the inside of that aperture that we've already cut there. Now this looks so pretty, white on white. Okay, now it's really nice that I show you this because there's so many different variations that you can do. Now I'm just going to move this out of the way. You can see also we have a layer here, which is such an unusual shape. Keep all of these because that will lend layer on what you've already die cut here, and you can start building up, and you've got the startings of another embellishment there, or for another card. And also I would possibly keep these as well, because these would make really lovely embellishments. And what I thought I would do perhaps at one stage is to use these to embellish the basket of leaves and just sort of 3D that. But that's my mind sort of going into overdrive a little bit and racing. Now what I do want to do is just, they're well and truly stuck on there. That's more to do with the state of my plates. I really need new plates. I'm trying to convince myself I actually need a new machine. So bear with me. I'll just take this off because I think I might need to use that machine a little bit later, but I do actually want to keep those leaves just to show you what I mean with those a little bit later on. So I'm just going to move those out of the way over there. Okie doke. Okay, so we have our two components already. Now you can see here that we have a green layer. on the inside, which again has the aperture there. So if you would have seen from the first slide that we have, I've given you a list of things that we need to use. We have our 5x7 card blank, and then we have 2 sheets of card, both at 4 3/4 by 6 3/4. So we have one in green, or the colour of your choice, and one in white. The white one we will stencil onto. Now the green one here can be your colour of choice. I've gone for green. You could actually use vellum as well. That would look really pretty. Now what we want to do, we need to cut an aperture in this that corresponds to the aperture on the front of the card. So line this up on the inside. Now you can use a tiny bit of tape or a paper clip or something just to make sure that that stays in place. You can see that that is totally hidden from the outside. Now what we need to do is to take our die that creates that aperture. So I'm just looking for that. Here it is here. So I've already used it to die cut the center of the leafy ring there. So now I don't need them attached together. I'm going to separate those. So let's remove that tape. So make sure that your card on the inside is lined up. I'm going to add the leafy frame just as a reference point to line that up, and I'm going to square that away as much as I can in that aperture, so I have the same a really nice border all the way around. And then I'm going to bring down the next die down in size, that little sun-shaped one, and just lay that in there. Now what I want to do is that's because I'm touching a sticky bit. Right, let me get my tape. I'm all fingers and thumbs. So let's start again. So we line up our leafy die so that's sitting nicely within the aperture. Then we make sure that that next die down on the inside is lined up with a nice even border on the inside too. And what I'm just going to do is just going to secure that inside die with a piece of tape and remove the leafy die. Now what we can do, I'm just going to attach that there as well. Now we know that when we die cut our green piece, or the colour of your choice, that aperture is going to line up with the card there. So let me just bring my machine in again. I'll die cut this. Let's put your comments back on there. Okay. So let's just check that everybody is with me so far. Oh, hi Paola. How are you? Tina, you've been a real devil. I know. Tina sent me a little message and she was all excited and said that she'd been a real devil. It made me laugh. Okay. So now we have our second aperture in our colour of choice card. We can remove these pieces. Now again, this is another layer that you can keep in the envelope for a future project. Build it up with the other layers that you have here, and again you have the beginnings of another embellishment for another card. So what we can do now, we can now marry up these two die cut layers together. So we can glue this on straight away, and now you can hopefully see how lovely it would be if perhaps you die cut this green layer in vellum. Or another layer of your choice. It could be with a metallic cardstock or a pearlized cardstock or a textured cardstock. And I'm just adding the glue so I can just layer that down. I know that that's going to square up nicely. So when I turn this around, I put the glue in the wrong place. That's because I wasn't concentrating on what I was doing. I've got glue everywhere. Maybe I've still got holiday brain. That's fine. So I'm just going to wipe that away, no problem at all. I've got sticky hands everywhere now, so let me just take away. Okay, there we are. So we've laid that down. So now we have an aperture. We have a double aperture, actually. We have that lovely coloured layer, and we have coming through the back of the card blank. So we can bring in our ring of leaves that we die cut earlier on. And again, I'm doing this in white because it just keeps it nice and fresh with the card blank. But this could be die cut again in any colour of your choice. Any textured cardstock, any speciality cardstock, metallic would look lovely. It really depends on the effect that you're looking for. I mean, I really like to have white on a card, so that's generally my go-to, but perhaps imagine doing this in different colours. Now what we can do, we can bring in this ring of leaves, and this lines up on the inside of that aperture. So just take your time and just make sure that that lines up. There we go. We have our aperture formed in a slightly different way to what we'd normally do it, but say all it took was just a minute or two for me to just think of the order on how to actually layer these. But we have a really, really gorgeous aperture sitting there, which is ready for just about anything, really. I mean, I'm going to put the stenciling on the inside, but you can have die cuts. I've used the butterfly, which I'll show you a bit later on from the same set. Let me just show you. We have the butterfly here. I've already die cut that and layered that, but you could just have that in the center. When you open the card up, you have that on the inside, you know, just something as simple as that. You know, that is just using the set in itself. So this die cut set is a complete card making set, should you wish, because you have the aperture. Even if you do this card design 5 different times in 5 different colorways, they'd all look different. So this is it's like a one-stop set for your card making, and ideal if you're very new to card making. Everything is there. But as I say, I will go one step further and we'll add some the stencil design on the inside. So now I've given you sort of how that card is constructed. I'm just going to put all of this to one side, and then we can get stenciling our basket of love. Now I think that this design, I mean, it lends itself to so many different occasions, really, doesn't it? But what with Mother's Day coming up or Easter coming up, I think this is just a gorgeous image. So I can bring in my ultimate. I have my 2 card blanks there. I'm just going to leave them there. Now there are just 2 colours, plus a third for the stems and the twigs there, but it's basically 2 colours I've used to create this image. It's Garden Sage and Antique Pink. And I'll hold my hands up. I was completely influenced by the colours of Lisa's die cutting machine. As we know, green is one of my go-to colours. This would look lovely in the woodland moss, which I haven't done yet, but I thought I'd keep it light and bright and very spring-like with the Garden Sage. So I'm just looking for my stencils now. Oh, hi, Michelle from Oregon. Lovely to have you here. I don't recall your name either. So lots of new names to come back to. Really exciting. Right. So what we need to do now, because we are lining this up to go into an aperture, we do need to have just a little bit of thought of the placement of where we are stenciling to start with. So what I'm going to do initially, the card that I'm using, that I'm actually going to be stenciling onto, I'm just popping that into the card blank. I'm going to get my dies back again, get them out, and I'll just put them away. And I'm just going to bring in the leafy die. or the leafy ring die. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to place the die on the inside and just marry that up with the aperture that we've got on the card. Because what that is going to do, that's going to give me the indication of where I want to line up my stencils for colouring. So I have that in place there. Now you can either attach that in place, that's entirely up to you, but I'm just going to hold that there and remove that away. So this is where I want my stencils to be placed. And what I can do, and instead, because we've got some flexibility in our Ultimate here and the flexibility in the pegs, I've actually moved my cardstock down so it sits on the bottom of my Ultimate, the bottom layer of my Ultimate here, because remember, I mean, the Ultimate is designed nest, I suppose, to be working this way with your pegs on top, but I always have done, worked with the pegs to one side. So it's in this area here within this die that I want to stencil. So I'm just taking my first stencil here and I'm just offering that up to the area. And what I'm going to do, I'm just going to find where this design is going to sit on the pegs. So it's going to work by placing the stencil on the pegs, but missing this bottom one here. So what I need to do is each time I replace the stencils, I need to make sure that I'm putting them up one peg upwards, as it were. But you can see with the die underneath here that this is going to line up perfectly underneath. So I might just need to move that a little bit more. So I've just moved my cardstock up a little bit. So I'm happy with the placement of that now. So what I can do is remove the die from behind. My cardstock will stay in place because the silicone mat does grip it, not as much as the tacky mat would grip. So you can use your tacky mat by all means, but the silicone mat that the Ultimate comes with does a brilliant job of holding your cardstock there. And now I can begin stenciling. Right, so I'm just using the two colours. So my first layer, and I'm going to go through this quickly now because I know I've taken a little bit of time. So we start off with the basket here, and I'm using just the two colours, Antique Pink, Garden Sage, and I'm going to use various levels, various intensities of the colours just to build up this image. So this very first layer I'm going to add down is going to be quite light. And to do that, because I'm covering a large area, I'm using one of the Wonder brushes. This puts down a lot of ink really quickly over a large area. So I've done that already. And I'm just going to take that away. You can see just how light I've put that on. So I'll put that on. Now, before I move on from this stencil, I'm going to come in with my white stencil brush and I'm going to start creating some shadow and add some darker colour, but I'm not going to do it all over. I'm doing it along this top edge here is where the flowers are overhanging, so they will create a natural shadow, so therefore that colour will be darker, and so you can just see that I'm adding that darker layer over the top there. Now to add a little bit of contrast, I suppose, I'm putting a little bit more colour around the edges of the basket and along the bottom. And perhaps just a little bit more here, just to create shade. So if our light spot was here, this area of the design would be the lightest, and this area over here, which is the furthest from the light spot, would be darkest. So I do like to quite do that. If you've watched me on my other lives before, I do generally keep to the same rhythm with my shading. I suppose the bottom right hand corner of most things that I do are the darkest. It's just the way that I find sort of works for me. So that's our first layer sorted, and we've had we've set the scene, I think, basically. Right, so stencil number 2, make sure that you always move one peg upwards, you could go 2 as well, but in my case I say just 1, and this makes sure that all the designs are still corresponding nicely together. So I'm coming in with the Garden Sage because we have our leaves here. So we have to 3 layers of leaves. So I want to be conscious of the amount of ink that I'm putting down each time. So for this layer, I'm just going to go light-ish, because the other layers of leaves I want to do slightly darker, just so as we got that element of depth to the image, and that's what helps with like the 3D nature and sort of the realistic nature of these images, I really find. So I'm just going to go really light on that. Now there are a few smaller pieces here of leaves, and what I will do, I'm just going to pick those out and come in really dark, just with these ones in particular. Now some of these little areas are so small and fine, which makes me say that this is one of Lisa's most intricate stencil sets that she's done so far, but it's so lovely to work with. Okay, so you can see how that's building. So stencil number 3 again, it's more leaves. I'm going to come in with my stencil brush and this time go a little bit darker. Again, all with the same colour, all with garden sage. Now you could swap greens, it's entirely up to you. I like how each of the layers correspond to each other and marry together when I use one colour for all the layers, but just go in with different intensities. It gives me the confidence that all the layers and everything works together, because sometimes if your colour choices aren't quite right, and it even happens to me, sometimes I stencil things and think, oh, that wasn't quite the right colour choice, but if I stick with the same colour and work up and actually use the blending properties of the inks, you can see there that we now have 2 different layers of leaves, and if you hadn't watched me do it, you would say that I've used 2 different inks there, I would say. So again, we have layer 3. Now there's far less on this layer, so I think it would be really nice to go a lot darker again. Still with the garden sage. So we carry on into that. What we could do actually is just come down the sides in brush, as we're not having to cover quite as much area with ink. Okay. So again, hopefully you can see those just different layers of ink. So even before the image is finished, that we've got a good amount of sort of 3D-ness to the image, is a bit of depth to the foliage there. So stencil 5, everyone. Now this is where we start introducing the colour of the flowers. Now I went really subtle with this. I want the biggest flowers to appear as a white flower. Not easy done in this, but I think it works with this. So what I'm going to do is just really lightly with the brush that I already have in my hand. Oh, something's fallen. So with the brush that I've got in my hand, I'm just going to really lightly go over these flowers. It's going to look as if I'm not putting any ink on there whatsoever, particularly to you. It's going to be really hard to see on the screen, but if you're used to working with Lisa's brushes and the inks, you know that a lot of ink is stored in these bristles. Now there's some really small detail in here again. Before I move on, I'm actually going to go over those in pink. Well, these ones I'm going to go over in pink here. Okay, really tiny, the tiniest, minutest detail that I keep saying that Lisa's ever put in the stencil, but it really does work. And then we have some leafy details here, which I will go darker on because this is the foliage, but I am staying away from the blooms. So using your smaller stencil brush means that you've got control over where that ink is going into. So when I take that away, what you can possibly see, and if I swap cameras actually, yeah, you can see where the flowers are, that there is enough green on there And by the time we sort of come round to build detail on that with other stencils, they will be differentiated from the leaves as well. And a tiny amount of detail in pink in there. So I can bring you back to the main camera. And so stencil number 6, this is where we can bring in detail on the flowers. Now I'm going to go really lightly again with just the green. It's going to make these flowers really, really subtle, but I think it works on other designs, and obviously you could go yellows and pinks and purples. It's entirely up to you, but so I am just using the two colors on this, and I think it works. I think it worked. I really like the subtleness of those flowers sitting there. Now what I will do also, if you actually look at this, and I'm going to bring up the stencil, we'll bring the stencil up to you here. Oh, where are we? You can see we have really small details again, and what I'm doing is picking out these really tiny details in pink. So we've got a little bit of tiny small pink flowers sort of scattered through the design. So that brush is probably a little bit too small. I'll come in with that one. So I'm going to really go heavy into the pink with those, and just these tiny little ones here. Again, these small stencil brushes really allow you to pick out that detail but miss the detail that you don't want to be pink. So it really does give you that control. Okay, so you can see how that is building. So stencil 7, we have the arch of the handle of the basket, and we have those internal flowers there. So all of this is going to be in pink actually. So I think what I might do initially, come in with my Wonder Brush and just put down a layer of pink into all of those areas, and then what I shall do in a second is start to add detail with the stencil brushes afterwards. But as you say, these brushes, these really dense brushes, put down a lot of colour quickly, which is ideal. So we have that layer of pink there. So come back in with the stencil brush, and I'm going to concentrate on the handle to start with. Now I'm going to do either end of the handle darker than I'm going to do the centre. Hopefully it will give some dimension, and perhaps give an element of shine, or perhaps sort of 3D-ness, which isn't a word, I keep saying that today. It just adds an element of reality, I think, when you can add some areas that are darker and just leave an area that is lighter at the top. Now it's sort of worked out that that area is lighter for me there, but I think that will work. And I'm just going to add a little bit more colour into those flowers. Now we will have another stencil on top of this to add detail into those flowers, so I don't want to go too heavy at this stage. But hopefully you can sort of see how that works with the areas of the handle being darker and just that little bit lighter there as well. So now we have this stencil number 8. So we start bringing in like the twigs and the branches and some detail onto the flowers. So while I've still got the pink in my hand, I'm going to layer the pink over the flowers like so. I shall go quite heavy on those, like that. And then I think what I might do, I'll just bring in right in the centre, if I can just darken up the centre of those flowers a little bit with the smallest brush, and I think that might be a really nice little detail as well, like so. And then we have a little area here on the green flower, so I'm just going to come into that area with the green. We have some smaller little areas here also. So I'm going to come in with a darker green on those. Again, if you're using a completely different colour scheme, you could perhaps use, because these would be the centres of the flowers, so you could use an orange or a black or a purple or whatever. It depends on your colour scheme. Now the rest of these are branches. Now what the colour I didn't put on the slide earlier on, for this one I used here, I used tree bark, which is a really nice brown. But what I thought I'd do, because I can, and I didn't have them when I stenciled this image originally, used the metallic ink, and I'm using Fool's Gold, because on my little swatch that I've done, this actually comes out as a really nice brown colour. So if I just show you here, that comes up. Oh, so the light isn't that great actually, is it? But you can see that metallic there, and that is just going to just lift this image up a little bit, just by putting the element of metallic in there, without being too wild. I don't need to add too much metallic on here, because I don't think that will suit the style of the card at this particular stage, and there will be other times when I perhaps stencil this with more metallics and it'll be a lot bolder. But just to add in this really small element of metallics just through the twigs and the branches, I think just might be really, really pretty. It's almost a bronzy colour as well, this Fool's Gold. I think it's going to be a really lovely colour to use all through the year. There we go. And you can see, actually, let me just swap onto that colour. You won't be able to see the metallic of it yet, but you can see just putting that pop of dark in sort of brings the whole image together. I really like that. Okay, so bring you back to this one. So stencil number 9. Oh, look, we've got some detail on the basket now, and also on the leaves. So I'm going to do the leaves first. So coming quite heavy with this, again, still using Garden Sage. So the tone on tone layering of the colour works perfectly. Try not to at this stage, if you are using if you do want to sort of differentiate the colours, if you can possibly avoid the basket area with the green, that would work really nicely. It's not the end of the world if you don't, obviously. But what I'm trying to do is just add the green detailing in first, like so. And because you can use these stencil brushes like pens, you've really got a huge amount of control actually, where you place that ink. So I'm just layering up all those green areas and swapping it to a small brush, because there's a tiny little leaf that just comes into there. Okay, so we do that. Now what we can do, we can swap onto our pink, and now we can start adding the detail onto the basket. Now when it comes to the detailing on the basket, we've actually got 3 layers again. So we have this layer, we have stencil 10 and stencil 11. So I just want to be a little bit mindful of the amount of ink that I'm putting in on this level, because obviously we've got another one to do, and it would be quite nice if there is some sort of distinction between those layers. Now hopefully you can see, as I said earlier, that this is probably one of the most intricate stencil designs that Lisa's done, but really don't let that put you off. I mean, it really is just, it's intricate in as much that what you're stenciling into is a lot smaller, but just treat it the same way as you would all of the other stencils that you've been stenciling with from Lisa. It's just, I think she's really excelled herself this time round with the, there we are, so with the level of detail that she's managed to pack into these stencils. And I think this is a set of 11 stencils, so it's not much different to some of the other images that we've had, which if you've been with Lisa for a little while, or hopefully you've built up your confidence in using these now. But if you are new to Lisa, don't let that worry you at all. The stencils are numbered. Just follow these stencils, follow the packaging, the colouring on the packaging there. So even if your first image is exactly the same as what Lisa has produced on the packaging there, then you should be have a huge amount of confidence to continue on with your stenciling. So I've put that detailing in there. You can see how that's coming together now. So I'm going to do exactly the same again with this next layer. I might attempt just to go in a little bit darker actually, and I might just give this Wonder Brush a go, see if I can just get that in really quickly. So I'm conscious with you watching me, when you're doing this at home or on your own, you'll have nobody watching you, so you can spend as much time as needed. But I just do want to get this colour down really quick so you can see that final image. And I want this layer of the basket detail to be just a little bit darker than the last one. Okay, there we are. Oh, hi Mum, how are you? Well, you've been out for lunch, haven't you? Very nice. There we are. So hopefully you can see that that layer was just that little bit darker. And when I show you in a second and hold it up, you see that there is a differentiation in the two colours. And that just, again, it just helps build the image. Now remember that I'm always putting the stencil on with shifted up one peg as well, so that's something you need to remember to do. So this is the last stencil, so hopefully you're with me. That was quite a lot of stenciling for you to sit through there, but it's nice to see at least once how these images are brought together. So again, I'm using the Wonder Brush. I want quite a lot of colour going in through that the upright detail on that basket there. So you can see how that's come together, very similar to the one that I've done previously, and just using two colours, minus the brown obviously, but so yeah, the majority of it is just layering the two colours. So now I've done that, I can move that up and I can just show you the detail that we've got sitting in there, and hopefully, actually what I might do, put it on, there we go, that's a better view. You can see just how intricate that stenciling is. And just by adding the same colour ink in different intensities on different levels, you can add an awful lot of detail. So yeah, that comes together really, really nicely. And those two colours work so well together, don't they? So now what we can do, we can add this to the inside of our card blank, and you can see now that we've lined that up, you can have that popping through the aperture there. So it's really, this would be, the green would have actually been really nice in a vellum also, but I think that green works actually really nice with that garden sage. So at this stage now we can unblock my glue. Okay, actually, by the way, if you do have Lisa's glue and you haven't got the fine tips, these nozzles, although I'm constantly unblocking mine, it's because I don't put the lid on. If you put the lid on after every time you use this, you wouldn't, the glue just doesn't clog. Just that I'm not very good at putting the glue on, I must admit. So what we can do, we can line this up and pop this on the inside, and we know that that lovely image is going to be visible through the aperture. Okay. And it's a really nice surprise, isn't it, to see that image there on the inside. So that's the stenciling done for you. So I've been able to show you two different designs sort of in one go. Now to finish this card off, as I say, we can use the rest of the dies that are in this design. We have like the wording here, the sending love. So what I've done, I've die cut that, and I've die cut it twice in two colours. So one in a peach colour and one in a more corally colour. And what I'm going to do is just layer those two together. So I'm going to swap you to that camera, so hopefully you can see that. Now I'm going to bring in my fine tip glue, and I'm going to shadow the two, which means I'm going to layer the two over the top of each other. So the layer that's going on top, I'm going to turn that over and add the glue to that one in particular. I mean, if you're familiar with this technique, then you'll have your own way of doing this. Now, quite often this technique is done and you shadow onto a black or a darker cardstock, but I'm actually sort of breaking that a little bit and putting the coral on top of that peach colour there. I think because it works with the colours that I've got in my stenciling. And these two colours work really nicely together. So I'm just offsetting those a little bit so you can still read the word clearly, but you have that lovely shadowed effect. And to make sure I just line that up. It's a little bit tricky, so use your tweezers for that. And then what we can do, we can actually layer this on top of our little tag that came from the Best Wishes frame. Now, as I say, what you can do is use any of your nesting shapes, your fundamental sets, to layer that sentiment onto. Or if you're using a different sentiment, one of Lisa's other perhaps bold sentiments, then that can go straight onto the card. You know, there's loads of different options for you to add the wording. Now, quite often I make cards and I leave the wording off until I know who I'm going to give that card to as well. So I don't know how many of you perhaps do that. So you make the card, but then you actually wait a little while until you add the sentiment onto. Because a lot of these cards that we make, they're so useful for different things, aren't they? It's like a get well card or a Mother's Day card. So sometimes it's nice just to leave that sentiment off until you know how you're going to use that card, isn't it? So you can see there that we have, is that going to, yeah, just that little shading on the underneath or under the coral card there, just gives a little added dimension to that sentiment there. So I'm going to add that panel direct to the front of the card, I think. Now, I did toy whether I should layer it onto the green or not, but I think straight onto the white onto the card, I think works quite nicely. So that's the sentiment there. And I'm just going to see. Although my room is quite light at the moment, it feels like what you're watching is quite dark. Okay, so the last thing, which I suppose is one of the other elements that is sitting in this die set here, is the butterfly. Now this butterfly, there's lots of different ways that you can create this, and I'll just bring the dies out again. Now when you also get your dies, remember to flip them over because you have the dies on both sides. So I've already die cut 2 pieces for the butterfly here. So we have 3 dies for the butterfly. We have the main one, which gives us our solid die cut, which you can use as is. This is a lovely lovely detailing. Oh, see, that's really dark, isn't it? There we go. Lovely detailing on the antenna and the tail there. So I've die cut this solid piece in the 2 colours, the peach and the coral. Now, to create the detailing on the wings that you can see here, we have 2 dies. I'm just going to take those off. Now, what I've already done is attach them together. I'm going to take those off. Okay. Take them off the washi tape that I added onto there. She'll use that again in a second. There we are. So we have these 2 pieces for the butterfly wings, and you can see when you sit them next to each other like that, that they do actually form the butterfly shape. So I've never actually seen a butterfly created in this way, and I think what it will enable you to do is, if you just only wanted half a butterfly, you could just do that as well. I think that would work. So what I'm going to do, lay this onto my plate, die cutting plate here. So you're going to take your solid piece here. Let me perhaps put it on this camera here. You can see. There you go. So we have our solid piece, and then these 2 dies correspond to the 2 wings. So what you want to do is just sort of square them up or line them up onto each wing. Now the way that I would do this is to line up this area here and this area here to the bottom part. So if you line up that area and this area, then I think the rest of the die will fall into place, because the scallops on the die don't necessarily correspond to the die cut itself, and I think that can mislead you. So if you line up the straightest edge on the bottom of these sections here and these top sections here, then you'll be well away and you'll be really happy with the outcome. So having done that, this is where this washi tape comes into play. Actually, I'm just going to make sure that they don't move. I'm just going to attach those in place like so, and then I think it'll be easy to, that's actually all moved when I move the plate there, that will be easy to store those two dies together because you've already sort of matched them up. So I'm going to put those in, make sure that they keep moving. This was a lot easier when I've done this earlier on. I think what I'm going to do, I'm going to get myself another piece of washi tape and move you to that camera. I'm going to actually make sure that they stay on the plate as well. There we go. They're not moving anywhere now, so we can just die cut those like so. So we don't need, actually we don't need these pits, do we? So get rid of that one and that one. I'm going to keep that piece of washi tape on those two dies and keep those together. So if I lift those away, I can put those back on the tape there and lift away the butterfly, you can see that we have that detailed die cut into the butterfly there. And just by lining it up the way that I said, I think you get the perfect placement. Okay, so I mean, you can use the butterfly like this, you can use the butterfly like this. There's lots of different ways. It depends on the project that you're working on, but for this instance, I think I'm just going to add the glue into the center there. This one's blocked as well. So I'm going to add the glue into the center, put it down to the tail. So when I marry that up to the solid butterfly underneath, that's going to give me some dimension so I can fold up those wings. So we have a nice 3D butterfly element there, which, if you remember when we had these pieces that are sitting here, that could easily be put onto a layering center like that and used for another card. And so you have a lovely dimension sitting there. But we can also use that on the front of our card, I think, just to finish that off. There's different ways we can do that. Possibly we can put that there. Use a little bit of glue. You can use 3D foam, but I think that just finishes off the front of that card. Now, what you can also do on the inside here, you can stamp your sentiment. I was going to come in with with one of my stamp sets. I have a feeling this one isn't in stock anymore, but you'll have plenty of sentiments. But I think this will just be a really nice finish. I think we've got a delivery. Hazel's letting me know. Let me close the door. Didn't be me. One of these days she'll let someone come to the door. Okay, so what I've done is just pulled off the happy birthday sentiment from the scripted sentiment set here. I'm just going to pop that onto a acrylic block and find a black ink. Okay, so we've got this Swift Dry ink here. Excuse Hazel in the background. So we've got Lisa's Swift Dry ink. It's the licorice, so this is the black. It's a small little, it's only a small stamper. If I put that on there, you can see that that's sitting on there. So I'm just going to ink that up. And I'm just going to stamp the happy birthday sitting underneath there. How pretty is that? Now this is 2 card designs in one, really. So what you could imagine, you could have stenciled this and just stamped happy birthday and put that on the front of the card, and that in itself I think would be lovely. The same way as if when I stenciled this one here, I could have stamped just a sentiment at the bottom here, and that would have worked really nicely as well. So there's lots of different ways that this can come together, but you have the front of your card, which is basically the Leafy Butterfly Frame set here. And then you have that lovely image on the inside, which is the exclusive set that you're getting from Lisa's die cutting machine as well. So I think the two marry together really well. And I hope you found that useful. So it's a really nice way to show you how to use the die set there as well, and perhaps in a slightly different way as you may have done, may have thought of doing. So I apologise for the light, actually it's quite dark. Oh, there we are, that's probably a little bit better, but yeah, that's a really nice way to use the two sets. Apologies for Hazel's noise there. Yeah, delivery guy's gone. Yeah, she's a tiny dog, but she's very, very loud. So what I shall do, I'm going to pop up that slide on there for you as well. So it gives you all the measurements of the cards that I used and the colours that I've used. Thanks so much for joining me this afternoon. It's really nice to be back with you. Now there's lots going on this week. Paola is with you tomorrow morning, I believe, at 11 o'clock, I think. But there will also be an opportunity to re-watch the craft day activities. I think it's 2 lots of 2 hours, if I remember right. So look at the schedule that's been popped into the Crafting with Lisa Horton Facebook group, and that will give you all the times that are available there. So Paola will be on tomorrow. I know Lisa is definitely doing a 6 o'clock stint on Friday night as well, so look forward to that, and I shall be back with you again next week. So thanks for your company, everyone. Take care.